Every character in Duel Links comes with a variety of skills, with some naturally being better than others. The developers never intended for something like Strange Forces to compete with 7's Axel Road. For the most part, the skills they want to be good will be good, and the skills they want to be bad will be bad. However, sometimes things don't go as planned. Players might find a diamond in the rough, such as Blue Falcon Formation's surprising presence in the meta. On the other hand, some skills Konami likely intends to be viable fall on the wayside. They'll release a structure deck or high-rarity box card along with skills to push them, but the decks and cards end up underperforming, and that's what we're going to cover today. Coming in at number 5 is Mimi's Disco Fever skill. Mimi's event had a huge impact on the meta, with Seahorse Carrier finding itself in almost any deck that will allow it. Skills like Boogie Master Draw, Cure Master Dion Keto, and even Set Party 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 are viable options for aggressive decks consistently setting up their boss monsters or gaining life. However, this is a small case of suffering from success. The dedicated Aqua skill has been put on the back burner to these more successful, more generic strategies. With only one level 7 or higher Aqua monster currently in the game, the deck ends up lacking meaningful bosses, though the addition of Monster Reincarnation does provide a little bit of help going into this format. Moving on to number 4 is a deck that actually sees a fair amount of play on the ladder, and that's Roman's new Get Ready to Get Amped Up skill. The addition of Esperade allows for incredible pushes and a guaranteed method to draw 2 boss monsters, and a card that obtains additional material makes for a great start. Out of all of the recursion monsters we currently have, Roman Pick is by far the greatest, being able to fetch another copy of itself, providing infinite resources as long as you're able to keep going. And while you do that, your life points are steadily decreasing, helping you trigger Esperade's effect. While a nice boost to the deck, it is ultimately still falling short of meta contention. The new SR Rain ticket is a psychic support card, but of the various psychic skills, this is the only one that doesn't care about running level 2 monsters. While most Roman players are currently using the skill, there is debate on whether Psychic Drive or Climax Beat will be superior, and regardless of the answer, psychics are still somewhat underwhelming. Now, let's move on to the top 3, all of which are being taken up by Yuga, inventor of Rush Duels and mediocre decks. The Lightning Bolt Condor structure deck is the only paywalled content in Rush Duels, and it is bad. It hasn't won any tournaments over the 2.5 months of its release. The deck got a key piece of support in the mini box with Beast Summoner, but despite how the text of the skill reads, special summoning a monster does not count. Ultimately, this deck is simply too reactive, and doesn't have the tools it needs to push through, even with cards like Torn of the Windweaver fitting into the deck. Opponents are eventually just going to summon out Dragius, beat over you, and end the game. And even if you try to protect yourself with trap cards, Dragonic Resonance has those 3 copies of Dragonic Slayer, capable of blowing them up and then getting in for huge amounts of damage at your life. Coming in at number 2 is Tempest Drive. Konami clearly had hope for this skill, dedicating a box UR to Bender Break. The idea is that you'll be able to go +1 for 3 turns in a row, enabling the effect of Bender Break to provide a massive debuff for free. Additionally, if you do draw a copy of the Road Magic, the skill is pretty good, as it lets you replace it with any wind monster in your deck, including Torn of the Windweaver, a good card worth running extra copies of. Despite the Beast Engine being a competent resource recursion and debuff engine, the deck got almost no hype and sees little experimentation. I'm not entirely sure I've even seen anyone on the ladder using this deck. Ultimately, I think the deck has an issue similar to Disco Fever, a lack of good boss monsters. Unfortunately, there are no level 7 or higher wind spellcasters in Rush Duels at all, so future support for the skill is looking pretty lackluster. Rounding out the list at number 1 is Explosive Drive. Explosion's type restriction is even harsher than Tempest Drive due to the lack of any low-level rock engines to rely on. The lack of access to Seahorse Carrier and Currybot make it difficult to summon 7-Sword Magician alongside full meter impact, encouraging instead the use of several middling cards to meet the requirement of the Road Magic. This deck is in a somewhat better position compared to last format, as the inclusion of Battle Traps increases the potential burn damage from 1200 to 2400. If you're able to resolve the card twice in one game, you might not have too much trouble dealing the rest of the damage by combat. However, the skill is still incredibly awkward. One of the best things you can do is simply boost full meter impact to 3000 attack to get over your opponent's 2500 attack point monsters. But you can't access the recycling portion of the skill unless you commit the attack boost to something else first. The deck is severely underbaked, but that may be a good thing as players are typically not fond of burn-heavy metas.